Welcome to AMD Vibes!
75 hours and 55 minutes into their mission, the crew of Apollo 13 were coasting through the blackness of space, more than 200,000 miles from Earth. Commander Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise were on their way to the Fra Mauro Highlands on the Moon. They had just finished a television broadcast, showing a relaxed and happy crew to the world below. Everything was nominal. Then, a sudden bang shook the spacecraft. A master alarm blared through the cockpit. Red and yellow warning lights lit up the control panel like a deadly Christmas tree. Jack Swigert's voice, calm but laced with urgency, crackled over the radio to Mission Control in Houston. "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." Those words would become legendary. They signaled the start of one of the most intense and ingenious rescue missions in human history. Back in Houston, the flight controllers, led by the unflappable Gene Kranz, stared at their screens in disbelief. The data pouring in was catastrophic. Main Bus B, one of the two primary power distribution systems, was dead. Main Bus A was losing power fast. Oxygen Tank 2 was reading 0. Oxygen Tank 1 was dropping. The mission to land on the Moon was over. The new mission was stark and terrifying: bring 3 men back to Earth, alive. The source of the chaos was an explosion in one of the service module's 2 oxygen tanks. The blast had not only wiped out their primary oxygen supply, but also crippled their power systems. The command module, their ride home, was dying. With its power failing, it would soon become a cold, dark tomb. There was only one option, a desperate long shot: use the Lunar Module, the Aquarius, as a lifeboat. The Lunar Module was designed to support 2 astronauts on the Moon for just 2 days. Now, it had to keep 3 men alive for the 4-day journey back to Earth. It was a fragile, spindly craft, never intended to be a deep space rescue vehicle. The first challenge was a massive one: transfer the guidance data from the dying command module to the Lunar Module's computer before the command module shut down completely. It was a complex procedure that had never been practiced. The astronauts, working in the dark and under immense pressure, had to perform the transfer flawlessly. Any mistake, and they would be lost, unable to navigate their way home. They pulled it off with just minutes to spare. With the astronauts safely inside the Aquarius, the command module Odyssey was powered down to conserve its remaining battery power for the final moments of re-entry. The Lunar Module was now their only home, but it was a cold and unforgiving sanctuary. To save power, almost everything was turned off. The cabin temperature plummeted to near freezing. Frost formed on the walls. The astronauts shivered in the cold, their breath fogging in the air. Water was strictly rationed to just a few ounces per day to conserve it for cooling the electronics. Sleep was almost impossible, huddled together in the cramped space, listening to the hums and clicks of a machine that was being pushed far beyond its limits. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Gene Kranz's team at Mission Control was in a race against time. The phrase "failure is not an option" became their mantra. Engineers, scientists, and technicians from across the country were pulled in. They worked around the clock, fueled by coffee and sheer determination, to solve one life-threatening problem after another. One of the most critical problems was carbon dioxide. The Lunar Module had scrubbers to remove CO2 from the air, but they were designed for 2 men for 2 days. With 3 men for 4 days, they would be overwhelmed. The astronauts would be poisoned by their own breath long before they reached Earth. The command module had plenty of extra CO2 scrubbers, but they were square canisters. The receptacles in the Lunar Module were round. They wouldn't fit. It was a classic square peg in a round hole problem, but with fatal consequences. So, the engineers in Houston got to work. They dumped a pile of items on a table, the exact same items available to the astronauts on the spacecraft: plastic bags, cardboard from flight plan covers, duct tape, and a sock. With these makeshift materials, they had to design an adapter that could be built by the astronauts in zero gravity. They tested their contraption on the ground, and then, in a tense, step-by-step process, they radioed the instructions up to Lovell, Haise, and Swigert. It was a masterpiece of improvisation, a mailbox held together by duct tape, and it worked. The CO2 levels began to drop, and the crew could breathe again. But their ordeal was far from over. The explosion had pushed Apollo 13 off course. To get back on the correct trajectory for re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, they needed to perform a course correction burn using the Lunar Module's descent engine. This was another procedure that had never been intended. The Lunar Module was attached to the command and service modules, a massive, unwieldy combination of spacecraft. Firing its engine was a huge risk. The navigation systems were powered down to save energy, so the astronauts had to perform the burn manually. They used the sun as their alignment point, with Jim Lovell steering the craft by hand and the others timing the burn with their wristwatches. They fired the engine. It was a delicate, nerve-wracking maneuver. A burn that was too long or too short could send them skipping off the atmosphere or burning up on re-entry. They nailed it. The burn was perfect. As they neared Earth, one final, massive hurdle remained: powering up the command module. The Odyssey had been dormant and frozen for days. Its systems were cold-soaked, and there was a real fear that condensation could cause short circuits when the power was turned back on. There was only enough battery power for one attempt. A new power-up procedure had to be written from scratch, one that would use the bare minimum of power from the command module's limited batteries while drawing some from the Lunar Module. The team in Houston worked feverishly, testing the sequence in simulators. Finally, the procedure was radioed up. Jack Swigert, the command module pilot, followed the long checklist, flipping switches in the precise order. Slowly, miraculously, the Odyssey came back to life. With the command module alive, it was time to say goodbye to their lifeboat. The crew jettisoned the crippled service module, and for the first time, they saw the extent of the damage. An entire side panel was blown out. It was a chilling sight. As Lovell said, "It's really a mess." Then, they jettisoned the lunar module, Aquarius, the little ship that had kept them alive. It was a bittersweet farewell. Now, only the final, most dangerous part of the mission was left: re-entry. No one knew if the command module's heat shield had been damaged in the explosion. If it was compromised, the capsule would burn up as it plunged through the atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour. The world held its breath. For 4 long minutes, there was only radio silence as the capsule, enveloped in a sheath of plasma, streaked across the sky. In mission control, the tension was unbearable. The seconds ticked by, stretching into an eternity. Had they made it? And then, a voice broke the silence. The crackle of a parachute deploying was picked up by a recovery aircraft. And then the capsule was spotted, descending safely under its 3 main parachutes. Apollo 13 had made it. The crew was home. The splashdown in the Pacific Ocean was met with a global sigh of relief and celebration. The successful failure of Apollo 13 became a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the incredible power of teamwork. It showed that even when faced with a seemingly impossible crisis in the most hostile environment imaginable, a group of dedicated people, working together, could overcome anything. The mission didn't reach the moon, but it achieved something perhaps even greater. It brought 3 astronauts home from the brink of disaster, turning what could have been NASA's darkest hour into its finest. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of courage and ingenuity, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales from the history of space exploration. See you next time.